Hello, and welcome to another edition of All the Horrible Things. This week, we are talking the spectacle that is Nope. Jordan Peele's new movie, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like right out of the gate here, we should tell you that we're going to be spoiling the hell out of this movie. So
yes, you can't talk about it without spoiling it.
No, it would be a 2-minute.
Everyone
podcast.
knows going into a Peele movie that there's going to be a big old twist. He's kind of the new M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
Yeah,
in that you can count on something going on there at the end.
Absolutely,
that's gonna blow your mind.
Absolutely, maybe a new Hitchcock.
I saw it at the first showing. I possibly could have seen it 4:00 on the Thursday before it technically came out, and I loved it. I think I like it the best of his three. I know probably Get Out might be more important in the grander scheme of things, but you know me and aliens, so this one was made for me. I feel like
that's an
interesting.
interesting.
How was your experience going to see it?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. But that's an interesting just question you posed there without really posing it. Is that I don't know if one of his films is more quote unquote important than the other. I understand why you said it. But I think this movie deals with as much of his, social commentary as the others. I just think I love how he picks the different subgenres of horror to focus on. Like Us feels like a slasher. This is obviously an alien movie, and Get Out is more of like a body horror. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Absolutely.
I guess when I'm saying Get Out is more important, his subsequent movies don't occur without that having been the success that it is. And
I see.
I feel like
I see.
I think Nope's a little maybe more subtle with what's going on under the sub layers in a way that Nope I think was a little more overt.
Okay.
I know I was listening to him be interviewed. I think it was on Spartless where he was talking about not wanting to give away too much about Us when that initially came out, and kind of letting people kind of soak it in themselves and take their own meaning from it. Whereas that wasn't the case in Get Out, and he kind of felt like he had to explain what was going on in a way that I don't think he's doing anymore, which I appreciate because I feel like there was a lot going on in Nope, and I'm looking forward to hearing.
I agree. And I think a lot of, I think his movies should be talked about more and left for interpretation. And we certainly don't need him to spoon feed us.
Yes.
I love that he doesn't want to, he's happy. I'm sure he's happy to have a dialogue about his movies, but I don't think he needs to be like, this is what I meant.
Yeah, no, that's actually an interesting question that you raise. In terms of dissecting a film, do you put any importance more over like authorial intent versus reader response? Like how the meaning we take from it versus what he wants to give us versus really a meaning that's there societally, right?
Sure.
Cultural sort of reading that you could take from it.
Well,
I think really with his, you got to blend them all almost to kind of really extrapolate something worth a damn. I mean, were you to write an essay per se,
Right. Which he might be one of the most prolific filmmakers in that regard. I think his movies are so important, and movies really should be about, making you think. And a lot of times people forget that it's still an art form. And maybe it's because of the blockbusters that are Fast and Furious and Marvel. But
well, that makes me realize how few movies I've seen this summer relative to my normal going, barring pandemic mode. But for example, when you talk about these blockbusters, I think Thor and the Doctor Strange is the first Marvels I didn't go to see in the theater.
Interesting.
Because it wasn't bringing anything new, but Nope was bringing this new sort of flavor, this new experience that I was dying to have at the theater specifically, which I know was part of why he went this direction, because he's talked so often about it being about spectacle.
Yeah. And to really dial in on this movie, Nope, is basically a movie about filmmaking. It's it starts off with the 2-second clip of the African American cowboy, which was You know, the real.
Oh yeah. Okay, you're right. Which is used in the preview,
Yes.
which sets up their vocation
And I
as
mean,
horse trainers.
yes, but specifically for Hollywood films. And the role of African Americans in filmmaking and honestly society. I think we could talk about this more. I think one of the most important messages about this movie was about the violence in our society, and you know, a lot of the past wasn't documented, and now we have all this video of crimes against a people. And I mean, I think that was a big message, but yeah, to go back really quick to what you were saying about wanting to see this in the theater. I really think social media has really hurt filmmaking, because people, I mean, we're talking about a movie with spoilers right now. And that's a major reason. I mean, I obviously love going to see the movie, like a movie in the theater.
Yeah.
But a big part of it now is just staying on top of it so it doesn't get spoiled for you.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's inevitable. And plus, I mean, just getting to the streaming aspect, people have such short attention spans now. I just think it's really hard for people to want to sit through a 2-hour movie with a bunch of strangers, even though it's what I grew up on, like the AMC Cantera out in the Western Burbs was my church.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go there every single weekend. It was something I ritualistically did, but now I think it's just not so much in our mythos, our society, as it used to be, which is a damn shame, honestly, because there's nothing like an experience of the entire audience kind of getting swept away in a moment. Or, for example, I just saw that new horror Resurrection that came out. I saw a sneak preview of it on Monday at the Music Box.
Okay.
And while it wasn't my favorite movie, there are some moments in it that incite a visceral response from the audience, and it's fun to be part of that with them.
Absolutely.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's the same for Nope. There are some moments where, the audience are, noping along with the characters and what they're saying.
Absolutely. Another thing I had heard about this, the creation of this movie, like where it came from, is Jordan Peele had said that he started writing this in a time, where Hollywood films were kind of in danger. And I'm talking about, COVID, but, there has been a big decline in just box office numbers. And I think a big part of his message too, as far as spectacle goes, was to, comment on, people's attention span and not going to see movies in public anymore.
I think maybe video games is the number one thing, probably stealing the attention.
Sure.
Because I know for the most part, at least when we were growing up, movies were directed at the teenage male. Right? For the most part, when you're selling it, you're selling to them. There's the chance they might bring their girlfriend, the girl they got a crush, their sister, whatever. But I feel like for the most part, they were always steering any sort of promotional content to young teenage men. And now all they do is video games.
Yeah, that's
24/7. So it's like, because you got movies within the game, and then it's that interactivity. So I am. Are you concerned about the future of film?
Oh, 100%. And it's not even, I mean, it maybe coincides. I'm more afraid of how people are going to be consuming cinema. And I think a big part of it is going to be with VR headsets. And it's a really cool technology, but it will never beat watching something with 100 people, 200 people, 300 people in a movie theater.
Not to mention, I have a VR headset. And while I really enjoyed it at first, the novelty of it, I personally don't like the suction aspect, and my eyes get so sweaty in there, and it's a little itchy. It's not comfortable.
For a long period of time, absolutely.
It's really not that comfortable. I mean, I think it's fun for games more than to watch stuff. I very rarely have watched stuff in the VR helmet. Maybe I got to give it more of a whirl and see how immersive it is. But I don't know. There's just something about, 5 pounds hanging off the front of my face.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, part of why I love going to the movies is to see it with someone, to discuss it afterwards. And granted, I guess these new VR sets will let you be in these virtual cinemas. So in theory, I could be watching a movie with my buddy in New York, and we're both avatars in there. But
Yeah, that's fun.
I mean, well, we sound like fuddy-duddies. I just give me some old school theaters with the popcorn, and I'll be set.
That's how it
But
was
yeah,
intended.
back to Nope. Let's start digging into the messages that you think he was going for. But before we do that, because you mentioned that the first scene was essentially this Zoe trope of the African American on a horse.
Yes.
As they frame it, the very first person to ever be filmed was the African American on this horse.
Yes.
But then we move into the attention getter. What I love about Peele is that he is so good with structure.
Oh,
He
yes.
thinks about how this thing is going to move so well. Because at first I wasn't even sure that this attention getter was part of the film. I thought, oh, maybe this is just an elaborate production video before we see another, like his little monkey's paw thing.
His part of his production company, yes.
Yes, I thought maybe this is another production company because you have this chimp covered in blood with clearly a somewhat seemingly dead body next to him on what is clearly a TV set, and potentially dead bodies in the audience as well, from what I could tell. Did you see the bodies up there in the?
Oh yeah, yes.
Seats? Okay.
Yes. Gordy went to town.
Gordy, one of the Gordys rather.
Right.
The acting chimp from an '80s sitcom.
90s, I think. Was it? Yeah.
Was it 90s?
Yeah.
Okay, 90s sitcom, early 90s. It definitely had like an Alf vibe with the chimp.
Yeah.
Goes to town on his cast and crew and audience. But we don't learn a lot about that other than there's a bloody chimp and a body that he essentially just taps to make sure that it's dead, that he finished the job. And then he looks at what seems like us. The chimp is breaking the fourth wall. And granted, we find out later that he's looking at Jupe, Stephen Yeun's young character. But in this teaser of what happens, it makes it look like he's looking directly at us. And I do feel like Jordan Peele is always forcing you to look at your own behavior, look at yourself through how other people might view you too, or other animals even, because animal treatment is a big part of this film.
Yes. And one of the major themes in that moment throughout the movie is eye contact. And it's about not making eye contact with the horse, the chimpanzee. Later we find out you can't make eye contact with the UFO or the
right.
Yes.
Which I'm not exactly sure. Okay, this is the big question because, okay, that's the biggest spoiler there is. This is not a UFO after all. This is essentially a
creature?
Creature?
Otherworldly.
Creature feature.
Yeah.
But that can really shift shapes too, which we could talk about that more.
Yeah.
But the eye contact thing is such a big deal because when it does become more obvious that it's not your stereotypical flying saucer, you then get the sense that it is a big eyeball. It's a big eyeball in the sky. It's the eye in the sky that is looking down with the power. This territorial power that it feels like, hey, I've come here. This is mine. If you dare challenge my authority here, I'm gonna destroy you. I'm gonna suck you up.
Like an apex predator.
And digest you. Or like what happened in the Americas, right? When, the settlers came over here and essentially took over the land. If you dare question our authority, you're in trouble. We know genocide via the Native Americans.
Yeah.
So I feel like it worked on the Native American level, and then certainly America's original sin of slavery then became very similar. It's like the eye contact, and when you're trying to essentially see somebody on your own level as a human,
right?
When you do that with someone who feels they have the power over you, you get in trouble.
That's exactly
this movie, and certainly in history.
Yes, that is exactly what I thought. My interpretation was this creature in the sky was almost like the slave master. You do not make eye contact with them, or there will be trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah, that's what I was going for. But then when it becomes something different at the end, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I need to ask you my first impossible question. Please. I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer it because I've been scouring the internet for some explanation of this cloud that doesn't move. Essentially, this is the factor that gets the cinematographer to actually believe there's something going on. It's when they realize something is amiss, is when our main character ultimately notices that there's one cloud that doesn't move. But it's not the ship itself, because the ship comes out of the cloud.
Right.
And first I was thinking, okay, is this just it's home, or it's
I think you
means
answered
of what is it? How does it then stay still? It doesn't seem like this biological being has technological capacities where it's creating some sort of cloud hologram to then hide within.
I think you've answered your own question already. I think you mentioned that this creature can form different shapes, and I think that's what it is. I think it's learning to adapt in the sky. It looks at its other surroundings, and it has formed into that shape.
So am I mistaken in thinking that the cloud remains there when the actual creature is floating about elsewhere? Because I thought the cloud remains there while the creature is out and about, and that's what throws me off.
Okay.
If that's the case, okay, maybe you're absolutely right. It's like a chameleon. It can... I swear that the cloud stays there when the creature's out and about sucking up people.
Right.
Which to me is the biggest, like, what's going on there? I don't get that at all. And I can't find anything on the net about it. It's going to drive me crazy until I know exactly what's going on with this cloud. But now you got me wondering, have we seen shots where they're both there? The cloud exists with the creature, or if it is able to transmogrify into the cloud to hide.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's got me racking my brain.
It's a good question. So when I had mentioned, wanting to see this movie as quickly as I could, which I definitely saw it before this, but I would have liked to have seen it sooner because I was almost spoiled by articles popping up. One of the first things I saw, and I was like, oh no, don't even look at this, was could you actually be killed the way that the father is killed by that nickel being thrown down from the sky? And it's a really great scene. It's like the third or fourth scene we really see with all of this garbage. We're told later that like a ship, like a small aircraft had like dumped all of its waste, and there's keys, and at the speed it's coming down, the keys are lodging into the wood. There's a key stuck into the horse, and the father gets a nickel through the eye. And my question there was, there's the system that this creature has where it lets go of waste, and it has the ability to, I think later, I swear I saw some bones flying out of there.
You saw bones?
I think.
Well, yeah. One of my favorite scenes is obviously when it essentially defecates on the house.
That's what I'm talking about.
I took it for.
Right? And then in one of those moments, I swear I saw some bones coming down outside that window, which was really
anything
really
that
cool.
wasn't organic material is gonna come out of this.
Right.
And I guess bones would just take too long to kind of break down, because I know there are animals that eat bones.
Can break down bones.
It does get degraded in their stomachs.
Yeah.
But I think at this point it was almost a statement. It was marking its territory, right? Territory is such a big part of this that when it isn't able to successfully suck up Kiki Palmer's character Emerald, as well as the hilarious addition. I didn't think this guy was going to have such a big part. Brandon Perea as Angel,
the Fries,
our guy from Fries.
What a great additional just side character. They all have their moments of comedic relief, but he really has his moments. Very funny actor.
Here's my question though: is this creature smart enough to actively having like marked its territory, shitting on the house, saying this is my zone, or was this just happened to be the moment where the blockage, right? Because they get it to suck up this. Essentially, was it a wooden or a metal horse? That's just a decorative horse.
I think it may have been like a fiberglass. Yeah,
fiberglass. That it's not edible, and it's too big to just kind of go through him, so it's clogging up his system.
Yes.
Is this just the moment where the shit can come out because the blockage is finally getting past?
No, I think
because that's when it falls also on his truck.
I think it was
this decorative horse,
the equivalent of an animal marking its territory. I think it knows exactly what it was doing. I mean, it has a lot of space out there. It picked the house, you know. It was a message.
Fair.
It was a message,
which is one of the most like horrific moments in the whole Beast, because just the blood-soaked house. I had flashes to kind of like The Shining. It gave me Shining vibes there, with just all of this blood soaking down normalcy and what you would expect to be like, you know, a quaint country home, just completely drenched in.
It turned that
awful
quaint country home into a creepy house. It made the house itself.
It was a haunted house then. Yeah.
Have fear. I mean, it was really well done. I'd like to talk about one of my favorite sequences in the movie, because it is early in the movie, and you were asking me if I had heard many interviews with Jordan Peele, and I'm not sure which media outlet it came from, but there was a really great clip of Jordan on probably a press tour leading up to this, talking about certain movies and how terror is done well. And he describes Blair Witch as one of the most, you know, it's still one of the most terrifying movies, and nothing happens. You don't see anything. And
it's what it does to your own mind.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, terror and psychological thrillers, it really is your job as the audience to, you know, create your own fear. Right. And he mentions, you know, there are other movies where you see the monster too soon and you're like, you know, you ruined it. But there's this really great sequence in the barn. This is after Keke Palmer's character Emerald has stolen the quote unquote mascot from Jupes.
Right.
And we have this great, just, you know, beat for beat, great horror scene where he walks into the barn. The switch is going. He turns it off. He walks away, and then the switch goes back on, and we see the alien. At this point in the movie, what were you thinking? Were you thinking this is it? This is our creature?
I had no reason not to, and honestly, it was done effectively enough that I was like on board. It was, granted, from afar it looked scarier than later when it's kind of like popping around the corner, like super comically.
And what I'm getting at is I know Jordan Peele knows horror. He knows how to create these moments, these scenes that work so well. And had I not just listened to that interview about throwing away, you know, your scary moment and like showing the monster early, had I not just listened to that, I may have tricked myself into believing, oh my God, these are the aliens? At first it's creepy. The way they move is creepy. And then you see it and you're like, there's no way. There's no way Jordan, he's just a genius. He wouldn't have showed the monster. But we see the doppelgangers in us pretty early on. And I know there's no way around that. You kind of have to. But there was a moment where I was thinking, oh my gosh, are these our big bads? And it cracked me up. It's an amazing scene.
It was hilarious.
That one kid who drops down and he just thinks to punch it immediately. It was,
and just how long of a sequence it is there at the end, where that essentially these are the kids, Jupiter's,
and they were playing a prank,
park.
And it was exactly what you thought it was. It was a high school moment, you know, where you stole our mascot. We're going to prank you.
Well,
it was so
I immediately had flashbacks to, you're absolutely right in that he knows these horror tropes so well. And I had flashbacks to, I don't know if you remember the prank show Scare Tactics.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite reality shows.
Had a couple of these alien scenarios where they spook people. And it was frame for frame almost that same shot of what we see in the barn. They literally bring them to barns. Then you have
the great moment.
The alien down the hall.
The over the shoulder, we're looking at OJ's phone, which is a flip phone, mind you. So the quality is already like more like a found footage, and we're seeing through his eye what he's looking at, and it still works. That slow, and in that moment in my movie theater, people were starting to say nope, and it was great. It was really well done.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was
one of my favorite sequences in the movie turned out to be the most hilarious.
Yeah. There are some really funny moments. But before I talk about my favorite comedic moment in the film, I want to get back to whether or not you think that Nickel could have killed him falling from the
Yes,
sky,
yes.
falling through his head. The father said Otis Sr. And if I don't know if there's a Simpsons episode where Penny is dropped from a tall building and
I remember that.
lodged in Lenny's face.
Yeah.
So I think if something's falling from far enough, does it not gain that sort of
I
velocity,
think.
the terminal velocity or whatever it is
Well,
that actually could pierce?
Here's what
Especially if it's the eye, if it hits him in the right spot, the soft spot.
Yeah, if I remember correctly from science class in high school, all things fall at the same rate. So
Okay.
I'm thinking it has to be a specific. I mean, I don't think this nickel at that speed, at that height, would have shot through the eyeball. Now, I could be completely wrong. I'm not a scientist. Did the alien, does it project it, like shoot it out like a gun?
Yes. It comes out like it's part of like a fart. So
Right.
it's getting burst out there because you see the keys go through the wood.
Exactly. And
right?
I think that's what they were
What
trying to
has
let you
be
know.
that additional force.
Yeah.
Then it does make sense.
Yeah, and I
But,
think it is different if you dropped a coin. I don't know.
Right, and just drop it versus it being forced out. I don't know either. We're not physics people.
No, we are not.
Physicists! Thank you, brain. Bringing me there.
I'm agreeing with
but
you.
I want to talk about my favorite moment, and it's when Otis Jr. is going to sell the horse to Stephen Yoon's Jupiter.
Yes.
And he takes him into his hidden room.
There's a great
with his paraphernalia from the show, and Keke Palmer's character hadn't heard of what happened because Jupiter's obviously he was the kid on the set when this chimp ran wild. But they asked him what happened,
I know where you're
and
going.
all he does is say, "Well, the best way to explain it is via the SNL
Saturday
skit."
Night Live.
And he literally goes through the cast of who played who
At that
and
time,
then, of course,
yeah.
Catan played the chimp. But he doesn't say anything about what actually happens. He just kind of like goes through the SNL cast.
I know.
I was just cracking up at this
I was
part.
too.
It just shows an actor's mind more than anything. They're not really thinking about anything but the people in it, the players, more than actually...
Well,
they don't have the capacity to storytell themselves to Keke.
Not only was that a comedic moment, but it says a lot about Jupe's character, who cared less about the actual event and more about the spectacle of it. He was a bigger fan of the portrayal of it, like the reimagining of it, and like almost in a jealous way that like he's like, oh man, it was really well done. And I think it says a lot about his character, specifically later in the movie when he's has his own audience. But it was a very funny moment. To double down on Chris Catan like that was just hilarious.
Moment he was like, and Scott Wolf was a big deal then, and he played me. Like he was so excited that the host got to play his character.
Yeah.
But then what's interesting about, Stephen Yeun's character is not in it enough.
No.
But when he is, I think he really kind of steals the scenes. Before he goes out to his big show where everybody gets sucked up, he's kind of sitting there, and he's clearly traumatized by that incident. So another thing I was thinking about is just like how Jupiter is able to profit from this, and people are going to come to him naturally because he it's baked in, right? He's the showman, whereas we have Otis Jr. and his sister hustling, trying so desperately to somehow monetize what they're dealing with here, what's on their land, where it's just kind of like comes to the person who's already part of the system,
Yeah, and also on top of that, Jupiter, this character is clearly taking advantage, and we don't know that. We don't know that he's clearly taking advantage of OJ. He's buying the horses up. OJ's in his mind is like, I'll be able, he even says, same deal, I'll be able to purchase these back. And Stephen Yeun's character's like, yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. Like, man, how do I tell this guy
and
these
then he
horses are not?
immediately allows himself to get distracted, because ultimately what I'm to take it as having happened prior to everyone getting sucked up is he was doing these shows and it would just take the horse. How come it was at this event that the creature finally took everybody in the audience instead of just the horse?
I'll tell you in my interpretation of this is that he sets up that first scene and he does it really well. And it was at a specific time. Remember, he mentions it that it's a specific time and that there's a fog. And basically what's happening in this scene is Steven Yeun's character didn't make eye contact earlier on. The audience didn't actually get to see or make eye contact. It was a different night. This time, the spectacle, and he's very greedy. You know, he's taking advantage. He's doing the thing to profit off of this.
Oh, interesting.
And he makes eye contact this time. And then the whole audience does the same thing. And that was their demise.
Interesting.
And even his co-star.
Right, so the daylight really kind of facilitates the eye contact occurring more overtly.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I see that. That makes a lot of sense. And how cool was I wanted to see them actually get sucked up. It's more implied.
I know. Well,
that's one of those moments. It's like, show me them getting the whole audience getting sucked up.
Well,
please.
There's a really interesting scene instead. We see them being engulfed,
in the bowels.
Yes,
in the bowels of the beast.
Which was a really interesting choice too, because it almost looks like they're in one of those like parachute tents when you used to play as a kid. You know,
yes. Right.
And we could talk
that's
about
one of the questions I wanted to ask you is what do you think is going on with this creature's digestive system? Because we only see the people as they're getting sucked up to the blockage, right? To where the horse is there at the top. Do they get emulsified in some sort of like gastro acid? What is going on with them? And why does the blood get expelled? You know, unless
I think it's
that
almost
was blood from the monster, like intestinal problems from the horse.
Interesting. I mean, if it was that, I think we might have seen like more of that. We may have had more of an idea. Like, does this creature even bleed? You know, like that's a great question. My thoughts on that is that maybe it, you know, like I imagine, you know, fish don't chew their food. They engulf
like
it.
It really was like a stingray is what I thought, because if you think about those things, how they kind of just eat, they have their mouth on the bottom of their body and they just kind of like glide along the bottom to eat the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw this whole metaphor as the sky is the sea for this creature, right? It swims through the sea and is eating stuff on the surface
like a shark,
a stingray would.
Or a shark.
But to get back to your point of not showing the creature, Spielbergian, it's jaws of the sky. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it takes so long to really know what is going on with that sort of thing. But the way you see the shadow of the creature for so long, it's like the fin and jaws, you know?
And you know what else is interesting about that? Because I had, when Nora and I were watching it, I leaned over, because later on when you see it sort of like expand bigger, I'm like, that looks just like a jellyfish.
Yes.
You know?
Yes,
so I think it's a multiple, it's like a combination of all these things that scare you from the ocean, which was just a really interesting choice.
It definitely was. Let's talk about that then. When it does shift shapes, why does that occur? I was a little confused why suddenly we go from what does look like a stingray in the sky to then it's sprawling out.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was able to form into that disc and then come out in this big jellyfish formation. Was there something that triggered it doing that?
You know, I was questioning it too. And I think maybe having, you know, and I know I'll rewatch this movie over and over again throughout the years. And just even probably the second time I view it, I'll have a different idea of it. But I really think what it was trying to do was, like most bullies and terrible, is to make itself larger, you know, kind of an intimidating thing, even though ironically it was less intimidating to me the larger it got.
It was beautiful.
Yes.
More and more beautiful.
But yeah, I can't give you a clear answer on that either. I don't know. What
was it? Maybe the confusion, because they both were on each side of him, kind of like, and the animal didn't know which of them to go after, Otis or Kiki.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a matter of confusion. And then, like you said, it does kind of puff up because it doesn't know which way to go.
Well,
but I want to ask you specifically about those flaps.
Sure.
Because I didn't know what was going on. They look kind of like seaweed flaps. It's essentially
Are
the
you talking about like
work. It's
the green rectangles that kind of like?
yeah, the green
So
reptilian, like seaweedy sort of
I
flaps that can go on each
yeah.
side. It seems like it's able to manifest it on one side and then kind of produce it on the other too. But it wasn't clear how that happened.
I know exactly what you mean, and while I was watching the movie, there are several times throughout this movie where we get a very similar shape. It's the very beginning of the movie. When we're focusing on this squarish tunnel that we're coming out of, and when we finally see the cowboy, and it had a very
Mm.
similar look. We also see a couple times at Jupiter's ranch, you kind of come out of this squarish rectangular tunnel. And I'm trying to compare it because then when the alien actually makes that shape and it kind of like
Yeah.
flashes, I was wondering if this was just an interpretation of capturing things, through the
Oh,
lens, through this
I see.
tunnel.
So we're back to the whole spectacle thing, and
Yeah.
it's analogous to either the camera or even perhaps the screen itself, motion picture screen itself, like
Yes.
drawing you in.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, there's a forfeiture of self whenever you do get sucked into a movie in the best way. It's like the best films do make you forget about what's going on around you. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like shakes off what's around, and all you can focus on, all you can do is get sucked in
And
to that center square.
yes, and it's pulling you in. It's getting closer. You're feeling like you're almost being hypnotized by shooting down the lens of this
Yeah.
gate in film. People say close the gate. The gate is the actual like the end of like your cinematic camera.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to compare it to because I remember the very first shot, like when you're actually the camera's pushing in and then you start to see a cinematic motion of the cowboy, and that's the only thing I could really think of when I first watched this space alien pull you into its almost film style.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think that's probably what he was going for. When then, of course, that connects to our cinematographer, great
yeah.
character actor.
Oh
I
man,
mean, this guy I remember specifically from Alien Resurrection making that
yep.
movie. He was the guy in the wheelchair.
Iconic voice.
Oh, he's done so many video game voices. This
Yes.
guy,
Yeah.
but he was perfect for this role. And of course, it's really interesting that he's kind of the antithesis of what we got going on with Otis and his sister, because they're desperate to get that Oprah shot, right? To essentially exploit this natural occurrence, take advantage of what's going on their land. But he's the opposite. He's like, I've got everything I want. I don't understand where you're coming from, and because once you get it, it sucks. It's one of those things
Right.
that fame in once you get everything you want, what else is there in life, sort of
Yeah.
thing. And that's
The
what
the
leads us to
impossible shot.
the impossible shot is what he's desirous of, and it required him doing the unthinkable. Uh, I mean, yeah. Tell me what you thought about what he ultimately does then in his last sequence.
Yeah, he put himself into his own movie essentially, If you
Yeah.
remember, every time we cut back to his, I'm assuming it's a ranch that this guy lives on, a ranch
Yeah.
outside of Hollywood. Every time we cut to him, we see him, he's either going over old footage or he's reviewing raw footage of animals attacking each other.
Right.
And which is another common theme, not necessarily attacking each other, but a common theme in Jordan Peele's movies. And Get Out, we have the deer at the beginning, and
Oh
Us,
yeah.
we have all of the rabbits,
Bunnies.
the
Yeah.
bunnies, and this we have not only the horses, but we also have the footage on the camera that this cinematographer's watching,
Right.
and he's just watching. I don't know if it's the theme there is just death, that he's ultimately trying to find his outro. It was a really interesting. Again, I think I'll watch the movie again. I'll pick up on more things in the background, and I'll talk about this later. But there's a lot of great old posters on the wall behind OJ in their home as well of Sidney Poitier's westerns that he did, which you don't remember him from.
Oh, that's
And
right. Yeah.
yeah, and Black Cowboys. But I think there's a theme there too. Is also a movie within a movie. You know, this movie is about movies, and I'm kind of curious too what his. You know, I think he even says something to Keke Palmer's character about that shot. It keeps me up at night or something along those lines. Do you remember? Or like it will. He's
not exactly.
Yeah, but he's saying what he's looking for is that impossible shot, and once he gets it, that's it. You know, that's it for him.
And he does get it.
He gets it. He gets it.
Up. There's no chance for that footage, right? Because part of me was like, oh, he's essentially a martyr, and we'll have this amazing footage of getting sucked into it because it does dispel everything that's not organic.
Right.
But they made a big point of showing, how the film would get destroyed. Because when you see Angel kind of handling it, you got to go into the dark space and take it out and stuff. So it's not a film that's going to be salvaged.
No, but it is a second camera, right? He had they still have the film from the other camera.
That is very true. And Angel wrapping himself in barbed wire was a pretty sweet trick too. Maybe that's part of why it unfurled too, because it was after that maybe it was just tore up by the fence and the barbed wire inside that, it was in kind of distress mode and did have to get bigger as well. I thought that was a pretty sweet moment when Angel kind of...
It was really clever. Very clever.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought the whole idea of the film camera was also just brilliant. We have the TMZ guy who's all digital. He's on an electric motorcycle. What a weird character. And I know, I didn't expect it, didn't see it coming, and it felt so perfect still. It
did. At first, did you think it was TMZ at all? Because I suddenly thought we have like a government agent here.
They're already looking into the ranch.
Control of the situation. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially with the mirrored helmet.
Oh my God.
I just thought they're so smart. They've seen entities like this before. This helmet's what prevents it from making eye contact and looking back at itself. Well, because it was very reminiscent of what happens at the beginning with the horse.
Yeah.
And because they can't look at themselves in the eyes either.
Right.
Essentially, anyway, you look a horse in the eye and you're in trouble.
Yeah. So that's why they got blinders on too. And I loved that OJ put those eyes on the back of his sweatshirt. What a great throwaway joke, though! Like the Scorpion King, what a brilliant
bright orange hoodie,
and that was the first thing he worked on. And they didn't even end up using the horses; they used camels. Very funny.
You know what I just put together is OJ running away in a Bronco, which is a horse.
Oh yeah,
OJ in real life, right?
Absolutely.
In the Ford Bronco business.
And the woman, they kind of set it up early in the movie when they're on that set, and the woman like OJ.
Really?
Also, the guy on set there who is like the comedic relief in that scene is Oz Perkins, is a great horror film director as well. I think he did Black Coat's Daughter, and I imagine he and Jordan Peele are buddies, but he's also of, relation to Anthony Perkins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. From Psycho fame.
Yeah, from Hollywood royalty.
Norman Bates.
Which is funny because they joke about that in the movie, too. They're like, so you guys are basically Hollywood royalty, the Haywoods. I want to talk about the sitcom.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the sitcom, because that to me is really the grisliest of all the scenes.
Oh,
it's kind
man.
you got the rest. I feel like is more sci-fi, adventure, thriller, but those pocketed scenes of the monkey, and ultimately it's a balloon that pops that makes this particular version of Gordy. This actor playing Gordy, because they can swap out the chimps, I guess, and nobody notices. Does all chimps look the same or something? What's going on there? Pops, and then he just goes buck wild and starts ripping off faces, specifically of the young girl too, who pops up later at Jupiter's Landing. Right, we see her in the audience with the veil.
Oh yeah,
just ripped off by a chimp.
And it's
what do you think he was doing with this? Why did we need this?
Well, I thought it was when you're watching it, you're questioning like, what the heck? But the more you think about it, it makes so much sense. spectacle and, you know, taking advantage of like working with animals and
right, exploiting animals more than
so
anything.
we see this a couple times, you know, that the film set, but the third time when we realize that Jupe is under the table, there's a really great moment where Gordy walks up to that table and you see the veil of the if it's the table, like the tablecloth, it's got like a paisley veil and it's masking Jupe's eyes. So when Gordy walks up to him, it's almost like Gordy is no longer seeing him as a threat. He's not looking him in the eyes.
Right.
And
you know, I didn't catch that.
oh yeah. So we see Gordy doing his fist bump. He no longer sees him as a threat. They're not making eye contact, and it's this scared little boy who is about to fist bump him back. And then one of the most shocking scenes in the movie happens, and you genuinely feel bad for Gordy at that point, even after he's, you know, murdered everyone on set. It's not his fault.
Yeah, because he's confused. He's not where he's supposed to be. We're
Right.
not supposed to be using chimps in that manner.
He was being used for entertainment, and that's not
Right.
what animals are for. And that goes back to him as an adult taking advantage of these horses and feeding them just for fame. And ultimately, he deserves what he gets. You know, he makes eye contact.
He does.
Because
You want to feel sorry for him for what he's been through, but
he didn't learn his
doesn't
lesson.
learn
He did not learn his lesson.
He's repeating the same mistakes.
Yeah.
It definitely stuck with me.
But
that scene more than anything.
There's a really great moment, though, where we see this, and it's never addressed. We see the shoe in the background, and the shoe is just standing straight.
Oh yeah, the standing up shoe.
The standing up shoe is
because initially, didn't you think initially that before we find out this is the creature, that okay, this was the alien essentially influencing the chimp.
Before
there was something going on, some strange pull, some sort of gravitational psychic business going on. And that really Stephen Yeun's character is kind of the conduit of bringing this alien about, because he's the only tie to both. But that wasn't the case, right? What's going on with that shoe?
So what I think is, and again, I think this is just Jordan Peele being brilliant, is the shoe is the representation of what OJ says earlier on in the movie about bad miracles. There's no reason this shoe should be standing straight right, you know, like right up like this. It's kind of impossible. It's one of those bad miracles. But everything that else is happening in this moment is just terrible. Kind of like a smaller message of what's going on in the movie. There's a UFO in the sky, and it's not good. It's like it's what the movie's saying is a miracle, but it's not a good one. And that's what I kind of feel like the shoe is a representation of, is just this random, in this terrible moment, this shoe is doing this amazing thing. But it doesn't matter. I really
like your interpretation better than mine. I kind of went a little more literal with it, especially because you then see that shoe in Stephen Yeun's Ricky's secret room.
You do.
All the paraphernalia. It's standing up there too. So for me, my head went to initially, oh, this has something to do with that specific episode of the show. Maybe the kid was trying to do a trick for his parents, or like the shoe was part of the plot of that episode that they were filming.
Right.
You know, that's where my head went. But I really like your deeper analysis on it.
But here, to your point, that episode was about gift giving, and she opens those balloons and they raise up, and the balloons pop because they're too close to the lights. And then the monkey goes crazy. Yeah. But I'm
gonna have to track the shoe theories, because I like yours. I think that's
again. I just think it's this almost throwaway theme of just this idea of bad miracles, like not everything.
And maybe that's what the cloud that doesn't move is too. Something along the lines of the standing up shoe.
Yeah,
maybe there's supposed to be some inexplicable stuff in here for that very reason. I watched Us last night, and as I said, I like this one a lot more, but having gone into Us, knowing the twist at the end, I'm really glad I saw it for a second time, because
Yeah.
I found it a more rewarding experience than the first one. I guess after how awesome Get Out was, you can't help but go into a second movie a little wary about whether or not it's going to live up to the expectations.
Yeah.
And while I liked Us when I first saw it, I will say I liked it way more on the second viewing.
Sure. I mean, it makes so much sense.
I'm hoping that's the case with Nope now too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I think every time you watch one of his movies, they get better. They get, you just recognize so much more that's going on. And I mean, the very beginning, is it the very beginning of Us when they're talking about these, just the tunnels that are like underground and
underground tunnels that lead to nowhere.
Yeah. So now, like, when you watch it a second time and that's in your head, you're noticing more, and the tethered are just these, you kind of feel
and
bad.
Then the Hands Across America stuff I think went over my head on the first watch.
Yeah.
And I really got a better sense of what he was trying to do there, and ultimately how we kind of displace people in our minds and kind of see the top tier and the lower tier people, these shadow selves almost. But the shadow selves are really those in humanity that we discard, like the homeless, because Hands Across America was all about, gathering money and notoriety for homeless and sick people that we kind of just, brush under the rug, if you will. And that's what stuck with this little girl who at 10, she gets traded, swapped or whatever. And she could barely talk because of that, right? She hasn't spoken. None of the people down there are able to speak. So she's just gloms onto this idea of Hands Across America and how, hey, we are the weaker, but we can unify and essentially be as whole as you by, overrunning the surface world. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to finding more deeper meanings in Nope, because that's exactly what happened on my second viewing of Us.
Yeah, I completely agree. What a fantastic movie.
It was great, for sure.
This man, I think, is only going to continue to do, 3 brilliant movies where I have nothing bad to say about any of them. It's unheard of.
Yeah, there was a little bit on Twitter. Somebody had mentioned something about how, Jordan Peele, you're the first horror director ever to have 3 really amazing movies in a row. And he's like, hold up, John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Beat him with, what he's got? Christine, The Thing, and then what's the third one in a row?
Well, John Carpenter did Halloween.
Oh, Halloween, yeah. So it's Halloween, Christine, and The Thing in a row. So
yeah,
Carpenter does kind of, he comes close. But
I just
of course, I think Jordan Peele's just much more accessible for the masses too, and I think his subtext might be more important.
That's what I was going to say. I think Jordan Peele's movies are important messages. When John Carpenter, who is one of my favorite directors of all time as well, just makes really fun movies. And also, John Carpenter doesn't always write his own work. Adaptations. The Thing is based off of another movie.
And Christine, Stephen King.
And also,
which
he co-wrote Halloween.
I haven't seen Christine. Do I have to see this now that somebody mentioned it as a string of badassery?
Christine is another Stephen King story about a car that has its own personality. This kid buys this car.
Sounds ludicrous.
It is absurd, but it's Stephen King, and he finds a way of making it work. Do I think it's better than a Jordan Peele movie? No.
Okay.
Jordan Peele, The Thing is awesome. The Thing and Halloween are 2 of my favorite movies, of all time.
Yeah. But I won't even comment on that. I'm inordinately in love with The Thing. So
I will just say this about Jordan Peele: he is very modest, and he is not letting it go to his head, because someone else said, you are the greatest horror director, and he came back and wrote, he's like, I will not have you writing bad about John Carpenter.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I definitely appreciate it.
And it's
he's humble.
He's humble.
And I don't know if I mentioned this, but another one of his publicity discussions, he was talking about, I haven't even really done horror yet.
Yes.
Because what I've done is really an amalgamation of genres. I want to eventually do a horror, because for him, a horror is something that fucks someone up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That really leaves you, essentially, I think Blair Witch did that to a lot of people at the end.
Blair Witch
With
did
the
that
guy
psychologically. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, those
Yes.
changed how people thought. I mean, Jaws
Right.
fucked up a lot of people never wanting to go in the ocean again. So I completely understand what he's saying, although
I want to see his true horror though. Now
I know.
I'm like dying to,
I know.
and he was big up on saying like he thinks horror is the best genre.
That's what
because you can
I was just about to say
bring
that.
people to the audience while at the same time have that deeper meaning.
That's
you
what-
know,
that's
you're
what
able to
horror
analyze
does.
it in a way you won't with a drama.
You know, I mean, I think that's the difference between a good horror movie and just someone trying to make something for fun or make money off of it. Is horror is the genre that is supposed to deal with what's going on in our society and as people, and it gets a lot of flack, and it's certainly my favorite genre, and I'm glad that we have a champion in Jordan Peele who's not only talking great about it, but he's making really good work, and he may not say that he hasn't made a horror movie, but all of his movies are definitely being classified as horror movies. Even though you could say Get Out, and I think Will Arnett said it's more of like a thriller, and I'll agree with that. However, what's going on in that movie is horrific.
Absolutely.
So
it's like,
he's our horror champion. Sorry.
yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to his outcome more than anyone else in the horror space, I would say.
Yeah.
Upcoming.
Yeah, he's just that guy. Like, I can't wait to see what you do next.
True. And I'm kind of surprised because when I watched Key and Peele, I kind of thought Key was going to be the one to really take off, really have the brighter future watching that show. But it turned out, Peele, I feel like, has overtaken him.
I honestly think they chose different things. I mean, Peele...
That's true. They chose different paths, 100%.
Did you hear this? And this is really, really sad, and it made me upset that Jordan Peele decided that he didn't want to be an actor or act in movies anymore because he was offered the role to do the voice as the poop emoji in that Emoji Movie.
Oh my God.
I mean, how insulting to a comedic and horror genius. The man doesn't need your stupid Emoji Movie. He will make...
Which, the biggest, the tragedy of the Emoji Movie is that it's written by one of my, or at least he co-wrote it, by one of my favorite screenwriters, and that's Mike White, who wrote some really powerful shit. He's the creator and writer of The White Lotus, too.
I know.
It's like,
I know.
how do you go from, I don't know if you've ever seen Chuck and Buck. That was his first.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That stuck with me, too. Go from something that powerful and demented to just, Payday with the Emoji Movie.
To Payday. A lot of filmmakers out there, a lot of people will make excuses that they need the Hollywood system to get their movies made. I'm certainly somebody who thinks that we'll make movies and we won't need Hollywood. I don't think Jordan Peele has someone like Universal who trusts him to do great work, and they bet on the right man. He is making the best stuff out there, but a lot of other filmmakers were just not as...
And actually in Nope itself it kind of points to this, because the cinematographer is like, he's asked to be part of this, and he's like, but you're probably not going to do it, we're not going to pay you. He's like, well, that's fine, I do one for the studio and then I do one for me. So you get that money, but then you go do something artistically satisfying.
And I think that's it. And to go back to your thing is I just think Jordan Peele has picked a different path than Keegan-Michael Key. And I think Keegan does amazing stuff too. He's brilliant, but Jordan Peele was going to be like a Hollywood legend.
Yeah. Key's dabbled a little bit in the dark in Fargo. I don't know if you've seen the season with Fargo. Actually, they're both in that season. Yeah. I love them in that. So
I think sooner or later,
different paths.
I think as soon as you put Keegan if you were to put him into one of Peele's movies, I don't think it would feel right. I think it would be like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna make me laugh.
Right. You might not take it as serious.
But I bet you eventually we'll see it. He's like, let me get a few under my belt. But yeah, if you're going out into the California desert, don't look in the sky.
No, it's the only way. But before I say the signature phrase here, let's let people know we're dabbling further in aliens in the next episode by prefacing the upcoming Prey show by dabbling with some of the better Predator movies, and talking about them and what we hope to see this new show. Do you know what is it on FX? Is it HBO? Hulu, right?
I was under the impression it's a movie.
It's a movie. Okay.
Isn't
All
Prey?
right, so Prey, I think you're right, is a movie that's coming out on Hulu, which is going to be the newest incarnation of the Predator series.
And there's always talks about doing. Yeah, I think there's always talks about trying to do a TV show.
There's going to be that Aliens
yes,
series.
Yeah.
But
yeah. August 5th.
I'm curious. Okay, August 5th is when it come out, but we're gonna drop our next one about the previous installments of Predator on the day that's released, so we get a chance to watch it. In the following week, we will talk Prey with y'all. But until then, stay alive.